Good afternoon, penguins and octopuses. I hope you're having a lovely Wednesday so far. To finish the day, like we have been all week, we are going to carry on reading James and the Giant Peach from chapter 6. So yesterday we heard something stop, something shout, and it made James stop, didn't it? So we need to find out who was shouting at him. Sponge! Sponge! Come here at once and look at this. At what? It's a peach, Aunt Spiker was shouting. A what? A peach. Right up there on the highest branch. Can't you see it? I think you must be mistaken, my dear Spiker. That miserable tree never has any peaches on it. There's one on it now, Sponge. You look for yourself. You're teasing me, Spiker. You're making my mouth water on purpose when there's nothing to put in it. Why, that tree's never had a blossom on it, let alone a peach. Right up on the highest branch you say I can't see a thing. Very funny. Ha, ha. Good gracious me. Well, I'll be blowed. There really is a peach up there. A nice big one too, said Aunt Spiker. A beauty, a beauty, Aunt Sponger cried out. At this point James slowly put down his chopper and turned and looked across at the two women who were standing underneath the peach tree. Something is about to happen, he told himself. Something peculiar is about to happen at any moment. He hadn't the faintest idea what it might be, but he could feel it in his bones that something was going to happen soon. He could feel it in the air around him, in the sudden stillness that had fallen upon the garden. James tiptoed a little closer to the tree. The aunts were not talking now. They were just standing there, staring at the peach. There was not a sound anywhere, not even a breath of wind, and overhead the sun blazed down upon them out of the deep blue sky. It looks ripe to me, Aunt Spiker said, breaking the silence. Then why don't we eat it? Aunt Sponge suggested, licking her thick lips. We can have half each. Hey, you, James, come over here at once and climb this tree. James came running over. I want you to pick that peach up there on the highest branch, Aunt Sponge went on. Can you see it? Yes, Auntie Sponge, I can see it. And don't you dare eat any of it yourself. Your Aunt Spiker and I are going to have it between us, right here and now, half each. Get on up with you. Up you go. James crossed over to the tree trunk. Stop, Aunt Spiker said quickly. Hold everything. She was staring up into the branches with her mouth wide open and her eyes bulging as though she had seen a ghost. Look, she said. Look, look, Sponge, look. What's the matter with you? Aunt Sponge demanded. It's growing, Aunt Spiker cried. It's getting bigger and bigger. What is? The peach, of course. You're joking. Well, look for yourself. But, my dear Spiker, that's perfectly ridiculous. That's impossible. That's... Now, wait just a minute. No, that can't be right. No. Yes, great Scott, the thing really is growing. It's nearly twice as big already, Aunt Spiker shouted. It can't be true. It is true. It must be a miracle. Watch it, watch it. I am watching it. Great heavens alive, Aunt Spiker yelled. I can actually see the thing bulging and swelling before my very eyes. Have a think. What do you think has made this peach grow so quickly in front of them? Hopefully you said the green jumping things that the man gave to James that soaked into the soil. That's what's causing it to grow, isn't it? Well, quickly have chapter 7. The two women and the small boy stood absolutely still on the grass underneath the tree, gazing up at it with this extraordinary fruit. James's little face was glowing with excitement. His eyes were as big and bright as two stars. He could see the peach swelling larger and larger, as clearly as if it were a balloon being blown up. In half a minute it was the size of a melon. In another half a minute it was twice as big again. Just look at it growing, Aunt Spiker cried. Will it ever stop? Aunt Sponge shouted, waving her fat arms and starting to dance around in circles. And now it was so big it looked like an enormous butter-coloured pumpkin dangling from the top of the tree. Get away from that tree trunk, you stupid boy, Aunt Spiker yelled. The slightest shake and I'm sure it'll fall off. It must weigh 20 or 30 pounds at least. The branch that the peach was growing upon was beginning to bend over further and further because of the weight. "Stand back!" Aunt Sponge shouted. "It's coming down! The branch is going to break!" But the branch didn't break. It simply bent over more and more as the peach got heavier and heavier. And still it went on growing. In another minute this mammoth fruit was as large and round and fat as Aunt Sponge herself, and probably just as heavy. "It has to stop now," Aunt Spiker yelled. "It can't go on forever." But it didn't stop. Soon it was the size of a small car and reached halfway to the ground. Both aunts were now hopping round and round the tree, clapping their hands and shouting all sorts of silly things in their excitement. "Hallelujah!" Aunt Spiker shouted. "What a peach! What a peach!" "Terrifico!" Aunt Sponge cried out. "Magnifico! Splendifico!" And what a meal! "It's still growing!" I know! As for James, he was so spellbound by the whole thing that he could only stand and stare and murmur quietly to himself, "Oh, isn't it beautiful? It's the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." "Shut up, you little twerp!" Aunt Spiker snapped, happening to overhear him. "It's none of your business." "That's right," Aunt Sponge declared. "It's got nothing to do with you whatsoever. Keep out of it." "Look!" Aunt Spiker shouted. "It's growing faster than ever now. It's speeding up." "I see, Spiker, I do." Bigger and bigger grew the peach, bigger and bigger and bigger. Then at last, when it had become nearly as tall as the tree that it was growing on, as tall and wide, in fact, as a small house, the bottom part of it gently touched the ground, and there it rested. "It can't fall off now," Aunt Sponge shouted. "It's stopped growing," Aunt Spiker cried. "No, it hasn't." "Yes, it has." "It's slowing down, Spiker, it's slowing down, but it hasn't stopped yet. You watch it." There was a pause. "It has now." "I believe you're right. Do you think it's safe to touch it?" "I don't know. We'd better be careful." Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker began walking slowly round the peach, inspecting it very cautiously from all sides. They were like a couple of hunters who had just shot an elephant and were not quite sure whether it was dead or alive. And the massive round fruit towered over them so high that they looked like midgets from another world beside it. The skin of the peach was very beautiful, a rich buttery yellow with patches of brilliant pink and red. Aunt Sponge advanced curiously and touched it with the tip of one finger. "It's ripe!" she cried. "It's just perfect! Now look here, Spiker, why don't we go and get a shovel right away and dig out a great big chunk of it for you and me to eat?" "No," Aunt Spiker said, "not yet." "Why ever not?" "Because I say so." "But I can't wait to eat some," Aunt Sponge cried. She was watering at the mouth now, and a thin trickle of spit was running down one side of her chin. "My dear Sponge," Aunt Spiker said slowly, winking at her sister and smiling a sly, thin-lipped smile, "there's a pile of money to be made out of this, if only we can handle it right. You wait and see." Okay, what I would like you to have a think about before tomorrow is, how do you think they'll make money out of this huge, huge peach? Let me show you a picture of it so you know how big it is. This is when it was growing. Let me see. So we've got Aunt Sponge here and Aunt Spiker, who's the thin, skinny one. Have a think how she thinks they might make money out of this peach. I'm going to say good afternoon now, but I will see you again tomorrow for Thursday's story. Bye, everybody.